Welcome to Faithing Out Loud. I'm Pastor Tony Ruth Smith, and this is my husband, Pastor Wesley Smith.
Hello.
And we are delighted that you're here to be with us as we think about what it means to live our lives out loud in the world in a way that honors Christ. Let's join the conversation. Welcome back to Faithing Out Loud, friends. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's our first podcast of 2026. I will write 2026 accurately until about March. And then I'm going to start writing 2025 again.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what that's about. It's a rule.
It used to be more of a problem when we had to write checks.
Right? Checks. Our children don't even know what that is.
It feels like a lot of work now.
Indeed.
It's a lot of cursive.
Do kids learn cursive?
No.
Okay. Anyway, so last time we were together, we were talking about doing just an examination and thinking about what are your next faithful steps. And I realized that is part of our lingo, you and me, our next faithful step. And I want to talk about where that comes from. So maybe 2008, 17 or 18. You and earlier than that? Might have been 16. Anyway.
16. I don't know.
Everything before 2020, does it feel a little bit like a blur?
It does.
Anyway,
It does.
So we went to this class with a man named Lovett Weems, who is at Wesley Theological Seminary.
In Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, and he's like your grandpa.
Yeah, he is kind of.
He's like the warmest guy. Anyway, so at that event, he was talking about church transformation. That's what it was about. It was about growing your church, using your property faithfully and well. That's what he was talking about. But he said something there that absolutely has shifted the way that you and I think that I want to share. So he was talking about change in church, and he says, change in church is not revolution, it is evolution. And what I heard, and you can tell me what you heard, but what I heard there was that so many of us, when we think about change, we think we're going to be unrecognizable, especially when people are thinking about their church. If my church changes, it's going to be unrecognizable to me, right? And what he was saying was, look, you need to know the DNA of who you are. That DNA doesn't shift. You just evolve. You evolve into the next faithful version of who you have always been. And I was stuck in myself over that. Because I think that's true of people too.
And I think an important addition there, because I think the context of what he was talking about, it's a healthy change in church. Mm-hmm. And unhealthy change in church is change that doesn't pay attention to continuity or to deeper issues of identity, or doesn't. Same with like personal,
right? This is where it intersected with the personal stuff.
Yeah, it's like, and I think as I began to unpack that, kind of, in order for change to be evolution, not revolution, it requires patience, because there is no shortcut to that kind of thing. And a lot of the unhealthy change happens when we want to do things. We want to do things quickly, and we use, we frame that by talking about efficiency,
right?
And all that means is we want to. Often what that means, not always, but often what that means is we want to do it quickly and with as little work as possible.
Right.
And so I think in a church, that leads to unhealthy change, because usually what gets lost or gets forgotten or gets neglected is people.
Right, exactly. And so that piece of knowing who you are and understanding yourself before you start embarking on that sort of change is really important. It's really important. And so I will ask everybody that's listening today, how you doing on those resolutions? Because resolutions are us thinking about change as revolution, not evolution. Yeah. It's the new year. I'm going to start this diet and I'm going to lose 5 pounds by, whatever. No. Like maybe that's working out for you, but if it's you trying to revolutionize your life and not evolve, then it has less chance of sticking.
Yeah.
And so many of us make resolutions. We make these, we have this idea that we're just going to change our life. And I don't think that change happens that way. I think for people, that's absolutely the truth. So what happened to me that day when he said that was I was thinking about my own life and about the Christian journey and about everybody I know in my church. And I was thinking about how we become more faithful disciples of Jesus. And it is not revolution, it is evolution. When I was a kid, I used to wonder. It was like one of the things that made me doubt, right? I would hear about people that had a moment that they accepted Christ, because I didn't have a moment. I must have prayed the sinner's prayer 75,000 times trying to have the one moment, right? And I thought and struggled with the idea that somebody would walk up to the altar and pray one prayer and their life would be fundamentally and like unrecognizably revolutionized overnight. I just had some skepticism about that, right? Because in my mind, I thought it was like it had to be a switch that flipped, right? And that you used to be mean to everybody and hateful, and the next day you were kind to everybody and you were never hateful again.
Yeah,
right. Like that's what I thought, and I think that's what a lot of people think. And this is where I think John Wesley Methodism helps us, because that's not how I was raised to understand, nor how I, reading the Bible and doing good theological reflection, now understand how transformation happens. That is one of many steps that we're going to take. That moment, if you have a moment, is one of many steps along the way that God is transforming your life, and it is not going to be a revolution in a moment. It will be an evolution that might ultimately look like a revolution when you're hindsight looking at it over the course of many years. Does that make any sense?
I think a helpful biblical story for us, or figure, is Jacob from Genesis. At the beginning of his story, Jacob is a deceiver, and I use the language sometimes the Bible uses.
Right. He's a lousy little brother.
He's lousy. He's dishonest. He's deceitful. And I'm not going. We don't have time to go through the whole story. Go read the Jacob story in Genesis. He tricks his brother and his dad several times, and his older brother Esau, older by just minutes, by the way, they're twins. Esau wants to kill Jacob. Jacob runs away,
justifiably, frankly.
And the next series of stories, we see that Jacob hasn't really learned much.
No.
Then he has an encounter with God with that ladder or stairway reaching up to heaven.
Right.
He encounters God, and Jacob still kind of on the run, still seemingly, you see traces that the lesson might be beginning to take. Mm-hmm. And then he gets, years later, several years later, many years later actually, he gets word that he's amassed family and livestock, a couple of wives and a bunch of children, and they're all traveling. It's still nomadic culture. And so the word comes that he is going to meet his brother Esau's kind of tribe or entourage or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the night before, and Jacob is freaking out.
Well, yeah.
Because the last thing he knows, even the fact that he's freaking out and not plotting against Esau is a sign of growth.
Right. It's a sign of growth.
Then he has this encounter with the angel of the Lord, the river Jabbok, and they basically wrestle to a draw.
Wrestling.
And the angel of the Lord touches Jacob's hip and wrenches it out of socket, and says that Jacob walked with a limp. The lesson there is when we have an encounter with God, we never walk the same. But anyway.
He also changes his name.
Changes his name from Jacob to Israel, which means wrestles or struggles with God. And that moment is a culmination of all that had happened before, all that had come before. Jacob wasn't transformed in that encounter from a complete deceiver like he was at the very beginning. That moment was not an instant transformation, but the kind of result of years of experiences and mistakes and growth. And then he meets with his brother Esau, and Jacob is in a complete posture of humility. And Esau embraces him, and one of the most beautiful scenes of reconciliation in the Bible. Right. But the change in Jacob was not revolution. What changed Jacob was not encountering the angel of the Lord in the river Jabbok.
Right. It was
all that had come before leading up to that moment.
Right. So that's what I think we mean when we say change is not revolution, it's evolution. I'm not going to suddenly stop being someone who struggles with anxiety, and I'm not going to suddenly stop being having a strong sense of responsibility. You're not going to suddenly stop loving music. You're not going to suddenly...
I'm not going to snap my fingers and get rid of ADHD.
Right. But you are going to evolve. Wouldn't that be great if we could see that? But we are going to evolve within those things. We're not unrecognizable to ourselves, but we see how God is transforming those things. So he said this thing about change, revolution, evolution. And then he said, so the question you need to ask is, because we can get overwhelmed by where we want to be.
Yeah.
He said, the question we need to ask is, what is our one next faithful step? And that was so helpful, because sometimes I look at the world and I think where I want to go, and then I just get overwhelmed. I don't know how to start. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I can't, I felt that way because in that specific situation, it was before we did a building at our last church, and I had never done that before, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know who to ask, and I was just afraid, and I was paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And that language, what is one thing you could do today? What is one next faithful step that you could take along the path that would lead you a little bit closer to what you're walking toward? We built a building at Harrisburg because we asked, what is our one next faithful step? And it wasn't to build a building. It was to make a phone call.
Yeah.
Usually ask for help.
Okay, just to use that example of what happened at Harrisburg, for a lot of us, what our next faithful step looks like is asking someone for help.
I really hate asking for help. I'm not
yeah,
good at
which that's one of those things about you that it's just always going to be there,
right?
And sometimes,
but I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
By the grace of God.
In our lives, we have things that are true of us. That in order to go where God leads, in order to be faithful, we just have to do it anyway. You hate asking for help, but you have to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And so, I think about not only with church, because a lot of times when a change needs to happen in church, a lot of times churches will put it, or it will feel like it. That change is the responsibility of just one or maybe a handful of people. And so that the pastor, church council chair, various church leaders, whatever. But I think in my experience, and we could throw out words like alignment and buy-in and that kind of thing.
Right.
But I think that next faithful step sometimes is making a phone call to somebody who knows how to do something that we don't know how to do.
Right.
Or getting different points of view, getting different opinions in our own personal lives. So often what that looks like is, I think about like losing weight mm-hmm. or getting healthier. Mm-hmm. We want to, part of the reason those resolutions fail is we do want it to be revolution. We want to.
And instant.
Like we say things like, I'm never eating sugar again. That's just a lie.
Yeah, right.
And that next faithful step is maybe it looks like I'm not eating sugar today, but it also looks like I need help. I'm going to go join, I don't know, the Y or Planet Fitness, and they have resources.
Right.
So it's got to be more than just my efforts. And in the spiritual life and our life of discipleship, we sometimes forget that, and we want to be Lone Rangers. We think I could just kind of grit my teeth and
right. So maybe the one next faithful step is that you go on the church website, a church website wherever you are. If that's here in Mooresville area, I hope you'll go to Williamson Chapel and just look at what Bible studies do they have.
Yeah.
What places to serve do they have? Who's somebody I could call? I had someone in the last year said to me she was really struggling with getting to church. She'd kind of gotten out of the habit, and then, I think once you're out of the habit of things like going to church, then you feel like everybody's going to be looking at you and be like, oh my God, where have they been? Which the answer is, don't worry about that. Like, I promise you, nobody is worried about that that's sitting in the pew. Anyway, so so this person was saying to me, I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, could you just call this person at church that I know she knew? Say, could you just call that person and say, I'm going to come to Sunday school this Sunday, and if I don't show up, I need you to call me and ask me where I was. Could you just do that?
Accountability.
And so she did that, and she showed up at Sunday school. And I said, because I think if you get in the room, what you're going to find is that there are people there that welcome you and love you. And that's what happened. And then I said, could you just come sit with one of those people in the sanctuary on a Sunday morning? Right? One little faithful step at a time. And I think that's what we want to be inviting everybody to do this year, is to be thinking about what's my one next faithful step. And maybe this question about church is a place we could start.
Well, let's talk about it. Thank you for listening to Faithing Out Loud. Be sure to like and subscribe if your platform allows that. We'll see you next time.